What was the worst physical, emotional pain you've experienced in your life? Kidney stone, absolute murder. Don't get kidney stones, folks. Same. I've had almost 3 dozen over the last 30 years. At this point, some pass and I barely notice until I either hear it hit the porcelain or see it in the bowl. But the first couple, and maybe 7 or 8 since, have been completely incapacitating. I mean, curled up in a ball, howling on the floor and barely moving. I cannot ever overstate how bad this can be. I held my mother's hand as she died from cancer. The lead up to that day was far worse. Same. So sorry for your loss. My sister and I were trying to give her a shower, not knowing she was literally dying. I was trying to dry her hair, and couldn't figure out if she was still breathing. I put down the hairdryer and picked up the stethoscope. I couldn't hear a heartbeat. No one else was home. I had to lift her body out of the wheelchair and lay her into the floor. We watched her skin turn blue and waited for hospice to show up and take her away. This was last year. She was 56. I wish I could stop thinking about it. Edit. Thank you for the gold. When I was 12, I had a disease where my leg muscles were dying. The pain was excruciating. Just the weight of a bedsheet on my legs was too much to handle. As bad as that was, what sticks with me the most is whenever my parents looked at me, they started crying. Seeing my parents always upset was worse than the pain from my legs. That's awful. How are your legs now? They are fine now. After 2 weeks they stopped dying. It took a couple years of physiotherapy to get back to normal. Now I can ski and run without difficulty. Losing my first baby to miscarriage. I've never felt such sadness. Many years later, my boyfriend died suddenly. Thought I was doing pretty well until a few days after that first Christmas without "Hi Monsieur" got up and literally sank to the floor and cried. Couldn't even move. The only thing that got me up and kept me going was hearing his voice in my head walking me through the grief. Everyone's worst emotional pain is when you lose someone you thought you were going to spend your life with, I guess, or a family member dying. Physical for me was getting nailed full speed in the nuts by a football so hard I threw up. Pain that makes you throw up is the worst. My mom cooked some lasagna and me being the pig I am shoveled down my greasy throat as quickly as possible, which ended up with hot cheese and lasagna sauce sticking along the roof of my mouth and giving me blisters the whole way down my mouth. It hurt to eat anything solid for 5 days. The lasagna looked that good? I'm a whore for my mom's lasagna. Respect. Ha 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 ha, I fucking can't, dude. Everyone here is talking about family members dying and shit, and this man goes, I ate some hot lasagna once, lol, h-a-h-a-h-a-h-a-h. By the way, thanks for the fun little intermission from all the sad ones. It was a good laugh. So, this is really private, but it's by far the most defining emotional pain I've ever experienced. I was neglected as a child and sexually, mentally abused until I was in my mid-20s. People can overcome that sort of trauma, but my brother, my only living sibling, has chosen to be completely estranged from me because he too was also neglected and sexually, mentally abused by our family of origin, and he thinks I should be close to my abusers, who continue to abuse, and get over the past. I'm practically an orphan because of this, and I'm very much completely estranged from my family and suffering under an undue loneliness. Please be kind. My past is something I'm still trying to come to terms with because I've only been out of their influence for like 6 years. It's been a lonely and hard 6 years. I thought it would be giving birth, but a week after my emergency CSEC, after 30 hours of labor with 2 failed epidurals, I got an infection through my entire incision, about a foot long and down to my fascia, which is the last tissue holding my organs in. I had to be recut open, and the little pain meds I received were nothing. I felt every slice, rip of a staple, and screamed for what felt like hours. I was diagnosed PTSD from it. I still hear the screams in my head. I can still feel them rip out a staple. It took me 3 months to finally heal. 3 months of painful daily wound changes. A wound vacuum. All while being a new mom too. The only way to describe how it feels to be cut open is, yeah, you know when you get cut open? It's like that. Fucking worst thing to ever happen in my life. My anesthesiologist neglected to turn on the pump for my epidural when I went in for my emergency CSEC. There really isn't any other way to describe the feeling of being cut open. They did believe me when I told them I could feel them cutting me until I started to kick in. Fight the doctors. I don't remember that part. But my husband says the doctor and nurses panicked and they knocked me out with something. I still get panic attacks about it to this day. Just wanted to commiserate. Fucking female healthcare does not get the attention and safety it deserves. Not as severe. I had an episiotomy with my firstborn and was losing a lot of blood. I had to be stitched back together with zero anesthetic because my doctor said I couldn't wait for an anesthetist. I lost so much blood my lungs started to die from lack of iron. My chest was constantly in pain because my heart was trying extra hard to get hemoglobin moving. That really hurt for months afterwards. Also during the pregnancy I contracted meningitis and that was more painful than giving birth. One of my 3 kids died from cancer. I cried myself to sleep for 2 years afterwards. My wife, other 2 kids and I all live in Reykjavik now. People who have lost a child seem to have both an unconquerable strength as well as sadness. It's like being given a superpower no one wants. Losing a child is without doubt my greatest fear. Being stung in the top of the foot by a stingray. I went to emergency room for 16 hours and it felt like someone was pushing a red-hot serrated ice pick through my foot. I've been stung before. And yes, it absolutely does feel like that. I had thought it was a crab pinch cause it felt like a crab pinching harder and harder. Nurse on the beach put ice but it felt worse so I took the ice off. Doctors' offices were closed on the island since it was Sunday. We went to the fire station, and they immediately knew it was a stingray. Bowl of hot water and Boumasir while the pain was insanely intense. The hot water was the quickest pain relief I've had in my life. I've sawed into my hand at least 2 times. Stabbed it, burned it, got 3rd-degree burns on my ankle, broke my collarbone and an arm. All on separate occasions years apart. Each one of those experiences is more enjoyable than failing at something that's important to you because of your undiagnosed mental illness. Damn. Testicular torsion. Wouldn't recommend it. I had an ovarian torsion from a large cyst that was on top of the ovary and it essentially fell to the side, cutting off blood supply to the ovary. The pain was worse than childbirth. My dad was at the ER with me and thought I was being dramatic about the pain until finally the doctor said, "Sir, her pain right now is equivalent to someone taking your testicles and wrapping them up over your head," and he didn't make another comment after that. Why do so many dudes see a woman in pain and assume she's just being dramatic? Begins with an S and ends in exism. Good doc. Always infections. Ear infections hurt real bad. Kidney infections are worse. But nothing comes close to MERS. It turned into sepsis and in days in the ICU. 0 tenths do not recommend. I also had a kidney infection. I didn't know it, so I didn't immediately go to the hospital. Just thought my back was sore. By the 3rd day, I wasn't able to sleep without crying and had someone take me to the hospital. Ended up being in there for a week. Almost died from sepsis. Also would not recommend. Even with IV painkillers I was pretty much in constant pain. Fissures. Dude. Imagine being terrified to drop a deuce because you know the pain is going to literally cripple you for the rest of the day. I couldn't walk or stand. It was debilitating. Do not get fissures. I met my wife when I was 6 years old. At age 49 she told me she didn't love me anymore and wanted to separate. I'm still on the edge of suicide. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Tilda Marcus Aurelius. That is my worst fear. I'm very sorry for the way things turned out for you. Physical Harrington rod surgery for scoliosis at 17. I have 6-inch rods drilled into my spine and a bone graft from my hip to keep them in place. When I woke up from surgery, I immediately woke up and threw up and split the 18-inch incision open, and had to be sedated again to re-glue. Emotional when I told my mom I was raped at 15 at a sleepover by a friend's brother, and my mom told me it was my fault and told me not to mention it again. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Both of them, monsieur. WTF is wrong with your monsieur? I'm so sorry. I know this isn't real pain, but the emotional pain for me was bullying. I grew up in a rural-ish, predominantly white small town as an Asian girl and was bullied a lot. My parents didn't care at all. It would be different if I could control or change things. But this was the skin I was born with and the town I grew up in. Pain is pain, and what you went through fucking sucked. You are valid. Nausea is the most underrated pain. I have a stomach condition and my worst episode of getting sick was 7 days. 7 days of horrific vomiting and nausea with no relief was truly the most pain I've ever been in. And it really fucks you mentally as well. Ugh, this is underrated. I'm experiencing something right now and nausea kind of snaps in out of nowhere sometimes, and the woozy feeling of it all is horrible. I try to stew in as many baths as I can. There's definitely a point where you can recognize nausea as the type of nausea that will promise a vomit, and those are even worse, monsieur. Migraines are the worst for me. It feels like a hook is tied to my right eye socket and is trying to pull the front of my skull off the rest of my head. The death of a dog. They are like family members. When my grandfather died, I was quite sad. Sad to lose such a strong man to the passage of time. I have wonderful memories of him playing soccer with me in his living room while Grandma looked puzzled. When my dog died, I felt like a big chunk was ripped out from my heart. I couldn't even cry. My buddy was gone. It's something that will inevitably happen to all dog owners, but that doesn't make it less devastating. Very close to the sadness after breaking up with my ex, who I thought I was gonna marry. But losing my dog was next level. Breaking up with my first love. Didn't realize it would feel like someone died. That's the bit I didn't expect. I read that famous shipwreck post sometime after the fact and realized the process was exactly the same. Physical, migraine. Emotional, dad dying when I was 18. Emotional pain. Lots of contenders here, but recency bias says my mom's death would win. I cried every day for 2 weeks. Physical. Getting my IUD inserted. She was like, there's going to be a bit of pressure, but holy shit. I never knew it was gonna be like that. That whole day was awful. Had the worst cramps of my life. Vomiting and diarrhea all day. I'm glad I got the IUD, but I really wish I had known how bad it could be. I would have had my fiancé drive me, gotten some snacks and just dealt with it. The surprise made it worse, I think. Emotional. My ex telling me that they no longer loved me romantically. I have always felt like no one could ever love me like that, and it completely destroyed all progress I had made in believing I could be loved, and it sent me into one of my worst depressive episodes. Physical. I have had knee pain since I was 12, and on a good day it's a 7/10 on a pain scale. I saw 2 specialists when it first started. One accused me of lying to get out of school, and the other told me it was just growing pains. I haven't grown at all in a few years and still have this pain. Worst emotional was seeing my friend take her last breath from a suicide attempt. Physical. Probably having tendinitis as a kid. Was supposed to have surgery, but my parents were like, he's fine, and didn't even take me out of football. My first love telling me to move on after we broke up. We kept in touch a bit after breakup. I had it in my head we'd get back together eventually. BC, our love was so incredible. I call her late at night and we chatted, and I said I think we'll get back together when time is right. She said no and to move on. The desperate feeling of losing her forever hurt so bad. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.